Hello. Today is November 22nd, 1994, and my name is Dan Cruz, and I am a volunteer with the Illinois State Historical Society, which is cooperating with a statewide effort to collect oral histories from Illinois citizens that participated in the momentous events surrounding World War II. We are in the home of Max and Ann Zschau, and you live at
104 South 10th in Marshall.
Illinois. Max and Ann served during the war, and they were both in the military at that time, and we're going to interview them jointly today. Ann, please start by introducing yourself to us, and I need your maiden name here.
I was named by my mother, Annabelle Holsworth Coldren, and I am now Zschau, but I go by the name of Ann. However, my service records are Annabelle H.
Annabelle H. Max, do the same for me, if you would.
My name?
Well, my name is Max Zschau Jr. Jr. My name was actually Max Jr. Zschau, but I didn't like the J Jr. and it was a middle name, so I put it Junior on the end, and I had my service record shows NMI, no middle initial.
No middle initial, okay. At this time, Ann, please give me your place of birth and the date of your birth.
Marshall, Illinois, May 25, 1920.
Okay, and Max?
Mine is July 24th, 1923.
Where?
At Marshall.
Marshall, Illinois.
Yeah.
Okay. And Ann, please give me the names of each of your parents.
Right. Harry O. and Anna V. Coldren.
Okay.
Do you want maiden names?
Now, how about spell Coldren for me?
All right. Coldren.
Okay. Max, do the same. I need the name of your parents.
My father's name was Max
Max Curtis.
Max Curtis Zschau, and my mother was Anna Marie Matthews.
Okay.
She pronounced it Matt twice.
Matt twice.
But it was Matthew.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Oh, yes. I have 4 sisters and 1 brother. There were 6 of us children.
Okay, can you give me their names?
Yes, in line. Rosamond H., her middle name is Holsworth, Helen Elizabeth, Harry Eldon, Clarine Louise, then I, Annabelle H., and our youngest was Emma Jean.
Okay. And Max, how about you?
Well, I had all brothers. My oldest one was Edmund. It's Moritz.
Edmund M.
And he was in the Marines. And then there's Raymond Moore.
I don't know. We get them mixed.
Raymond M. Moritz Zschau, and he was in the Navy. And then comes me. I was Max, and I was in the Army Air Force. And then I have a younger brother, that's Arthur Allen, and he was in the Korean War.
In the Korean War. Okay. Are there any details about your parents or your family that you would like to give at this time?
Yes. My dad fought in the Spanish-American War, both in Cuba. I don't know if he fought, but he was in Cuba and the Philippines. And while Max tells you about his parents, I'll get a picture of my dad in his uniform.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
All right, my folks came from Germany.
Do you know about the approximate dates when they came over here, Max?
Prior to 1914, it was probably 1900. Okay. His dad moved the children over here to escape the Kaiser.
Uh-huh.
Is that right?
Yeah, and they were all practically all came to the Chicago area. My mother came over here later, and
his dad asked her to marry him by mail.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. So they arrived, if they arrived here probably just several years before the outbreak of the First World War.
Yes.
So, with a lot of...
my dad was too young. His brothers. There was three of them, I think, that fought against in the war against the first war,
Okay.
World War One, against Germany, and it was a tough road to hoe
Sure.
because we were German. But they were all in the Chicago area. They were all gardeners except one, and he worked in a factory. I don't know which one, but it was in Waukegan. And all of them were on the North Shore in Chicago and were on estates as gardeners for millionaires. And that was their beginning here in this country. And Dad came down here in 1914 and picked Marshall, and that's where we've been ever since.
And your dad was in the flower business, and
Yes, they were all florists except the one.
Is that right?
Mm.
And so you continued in that tradition.
Yeah,
Is that
well, you see, I did, and Art did, and Kurt is now, and but
So there's a family traditions passed. That's good.
they're all the brothers are dead now, so, but they were all florists. One.
And we're going to begin with you the series of questions, and I have they're broken down to different segments. We're going to talk pre-war, war, and post-war. And what was life like for you before the war, and specifically during 1941?
I worked for what was known as the Ohio Oil Company. It's where the school office is now on 5th Street. And I was a secretary, and I didn't miss much, meaning we had sugar rationing, gas rationing. My mother and dad were both dead by then, but I lived a very normal, I thought, and happy life. I remember Pearl Harbor Day.
Well, what thoughts do you have about the war before the United States became directly involved in the conflict?
I was not too involved, I'm sorry to say. I was young, it didn't involve me, and I wasn't too upset, as I recall.
Okay. Tell me, did you hear the December 7th, 1941 radio announcement about the bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese? And if so, where were you and what were you doing at the time?
I know right where I was, if I remember correctly. It was on a Sunday, and Bob Lowry had come down, and we were sitting in front of our house on Vine and 5th, and the news came, and I simply couldn't believe it. I didn't know what it meant, actually. I knew people were being killed, but it was just like a movie. It's not affecting me. It was terrible.
Well, what was the reaction and the response of those around you at this time?
Same thing. Unbelievable. But I wasn't ready to fight.
How had you formed any prior opinions or developed any feelings about what had been taking place in Europe or Asia at this time?
No, I read about it. But no, I don't think I was very smart when I was young, and I wasn't affected by it, other than we did without hose, and as I said, sugar and gas, but no, I wasn't too upset. And some of my friends and people that I knew had joined the service, but didn't affect me at all.
Well, what event led to your entry into military service? And when you talk about this, I need for you to tell me if you were drafted or did you volunteer, and then talk to me specifically about what branch of service you were in.
Well, I really wanted to do something. And without telling any of my relatives, I went to Terre Haute and went to a recruiting station. It was upstairs someplace. I think it was above the bank on 7th and Wabash. And my real wish was to join the Navy. The waves sounded awful good to me. And for some reason, the Coast Guard recruiter was there and suggested that if I wanted to serve, I might as well join the Coast Guard, which I did.
And was your response to entering the military service influenced by any family or friends' attitudes towards the war, the threat to national security, or were there any other considerations?
I just wanted to do something. So no, nobody coerced me. In fact, I think my family was kind of upset that I had done it without even checking with them to see if I could or should.
Okay, Max, we're going to back up. I'm going to ask you the same series of questions here, so maybe you had a bit of chance to cheat and listen to what Ann had to give. But what was life like for you before the war, and specifically during 1941?
Well, I worked in the florist shop down at the greenhouse, and I went to school, and I graduated in 1941. But I'm like Ann. I just I know exactly where I was when it was when Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Well, explain to me. Tell me.
I was at the intersection of Central and in Central Street and Main Street in Casey at the stop sign, driving a truck down to our flower shop on South Central near the railroad track, and I didn't know what to think. I just sat there.
Do you ever remember any of the reactions of those around you? Were you told? Did you hear it on the radio? Or
I heard it on the truck radio, the delivery truck radio.
Do you remember at that time? And this we need to go back a little bit, but tell me, the announcer on the radio, did they interrupt programming, or did?
Yes.
Or was it already interrupted at this time?
They came on. I was listening to some music or something. And they interrupted and said Pearl Harbor had been bombed.
In fact, did FDR announce it?
Well, that was later when he had declared war.
I believe on the next day.
Oh.
I believe the next day is
well,
when
it was
the first.
a very somber voice that said, and they kept repeating that Pearl Harbor not only was bombed, but was being bombed.
Yes.
Were you frightened at that time?
Well, yeah. Yes, I think everybody was in a state of shock because they couldn't believe it that anybody would attack Pearl Harbor because it was our western bastion, Air Force, Navy.
Did you know where Pearl Harbor was at that time?
Well, I knew it was in Hawaii out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Tell me this, Max. Had you formed any prior opinion or developed any feeling about what had been taking place either in Europe or in Asia prior to hearing about the announcement of the Pearl Harbor?
No. I don't believe. I couldn't believe that we were fighting our ancestors, But then Hitler was bad, and he was killing people, and so I enlisted in the service.
Well, tell me a little bit about that, about how you enlisted and where you did this.
Well, there was my friend Wayne Crumlin and I decided that we wanted to go and do what we wanted to do in the service because we were going to get drafted.
Now, when was this, Max?
Well, it was December 11th. 1942. A year later, right before Christmas. And we went over to Indianapolis. Well, we went to Terre Haute first, and we enlisted in the Air Force, Army Air Force, because I did not want to be in the mud. I wasn't too cranked up about flying either, but I wanted to be in the Air Force.
Well, and now we're going to start another series of questions back to you. Now we're going to cover basic training. And when and where were you inducted?
Now, you mean when I was sworn in, or where did I take my basic training?
Yeah, sworn in.
Well, I was sworn in Terre Haute. Okay. And then I was sent to Hunter College in New York City for my boot training. And it was quite an experience.
Now, what was the date of this, when you were inducted? Do you remember?
No. It was early in the spring, because it was still cold.
So the spring of 1942?
Yes.
Okay.
I suppose. Um, Max has always kind of chided me. We lived in lovely apartments near the college, and it was not difficult at all. So I really had a good time, made wonderful friends.
Well, tell me about that experience of what were some of the things you did when at your basic training?
Well, it was all new. The train that took us to New York City was full of not only Coast Guard spars, but waves too. And we were supposed to follow the leader, and I didn't, and the subway went by, and I was left standing. Somebody took pity on me, and I got where I was supposed to go. But we lived, as I say, in apartments. We assembled for reveille. We marched everywhere. We had some real tough Marine drill sergeants, and I will always remember this. Swing your arms or I'll tear them off your body and hit you with the bloody end, something like this. Now, there were several girls who could not keep up the rigors of the marching, and they left very early on. So when I say it was a piece of cake, I don't mean that it was, but we had, when you do things, help me with the word. When you sing and dance and, who's amateur hour, something like this. And I was involved in a singing group, and to me it was just a ball. However, at night there were black curtains on every window, and if you happened to look out, you could see searchlights combing the skies looking for enemy planes. So we had that feeling. And then when we were sent to our where I was to be based in St. Augustine, we could not have our luggage tags up. Now, don't ask me why, but that's why. So the enemy couldn't see where our train was going. So we were aware that there was a war.
Now, how old were you at this time, man?
If it was 42, I was 22.
22. Okay. And after you were inducted, you said you went to Hunter College in Brooklyn. Is that right?
Well, I called it New York City.
Okay, New York City. And this is where you took your basic training.
Right.
I'm trying to repeat some of these
Yes.
questions so I don't ask them to you
Yes.
again. And this might sound repetitive, but I'm going to ask it. What did you think of the training?
Well, a lot of it was history of the Coast Guard. To me, it was simple. You didn't have to study very hard, at least. I guess I knew in the very beginning that I would be what they called a yeoman. I was going to sit and type, which I had been doing for the last several years. Mm-hmm. So to me, the training was not rigorous.
Well, did anything special happen during your training that stands out in your mind? And how many weeks was the training period?
I suppose 6, but see, I should have gotten out my book because I really don't remember.
Okay.
I just remember writing home for nickels because the Coke machines took nickels and quarters, and you never had enough. Okay. We were outfitted there.
Do you can you tell us about any other training camps that you attended, or
That's it.
That was it.
That's
okay.
it.
While you were in New York, did you have any leaves or passes?
Yes.
Okay.
We visited the Brooklyn Navy Yard. We did some nice sightseeing, but that was just towards the end, and we didn't have very many days off.
When did you go to St. Augustine?
Well, that's after my basic. See, this
this is
New
still
York.
basic training.
Right. What do you recall of this period about the place you were stationed and maybe the friends you met? And did you have any association with civilians at this time?
No association with civilians. We were in an area where there were none, as far as I know. I don't think any of the people that I met at Basic became a good friend when I was stationed in St. Augustine. But I liked them all. Mm-hmm. There was one girl from Terre Haute who got drunk, and she had problems, and they worked with her. But that was the only bad thing I saw.
And what was your military unit? Do you remember that? Was it a particular section you were assigned to?
No.
Okay. What were your assigned duties?
At boot camp?
Mhm.
None. We got up, marched to breakfast, ate, and there were women in the line who said, wipe off that lipstick, because they didn't want it on the plane, plates, cups. Then we went to class, studied, as I said, history, how to tell time, marched to lunch, more classes. You know, it was...
Were all your trainers, were they male or female, or were they a combination, or were they specific?
They were male.
They were male.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step for you was being assigned to St. Augustine.
Right.
We will take a break at this point here, and we will pick back up in just a moment with Max and his basic training experience. Okay, Max, we're going to go back and I'm going to cover your basic training experience. When and where were you inducted?
I was inducted in Terre Haute, but I went to Indianapolis to be assigned. I went through, I got our clothes and stuff like that, was outfitted, and we were outfitted very well because one of our local citizens, Hunk Archer, was in the quartermaster, so we were fitted well. And then from there, we went to Florida, Miami Beach, for basic training. The one thing I remember, we was on a regular chair car train to Florida, all of us, and I remember waking up in the morning and going down along the coast of Florida, south of Jacksonville, where you could see the ocean, and woke up and looked out, and there was about a dozen ships with their bows up in the air with smoke going up in the air. They had been sunk by Nazi submarines the night before. So for a country boy, that made me realize that we were at war.
So I guess this next question might pale in comparison. It says, well, do you have any special memories of the time in which you were inducted?
No, other than taking the oath and at Terre Haute, and just going to Terre Haute and at Fort Benjamin Harrison, and was outfitted and taking shots and stuff like that, and then we were separated there, and we went to Miami Beach.
And how old were you at the time?
19.
So your basic training or your military training took place in Miami Beach.
Yeah.
Tell me that experience and what kind
All
of...
right. We marched every place. We took our basic training on a golf course where we did all of the crawling in sand burrs, if you know what sand burrs are, since you're from Florida. They were nasty. And we marched, and there were to cadence every place we went, and at night we were chosen for guard duty on top of hotels where, like Ann said, there was no lights on the ocean side, but that was foolish because the submarine just laid out way away, and they could see all the ships going down the coast. And at night, and they had guard duty on the beach, but we weren't there because there were German submarines that set off spies and stuff, and there were several caught up along there. but we never knew anything about that. Guard duty was just to introduce you to Army life, is more or less.
Did you have
The
class?
regulars, huh?
Did you have class?
Did we have classes? No. We just marched, and we got our classes later when we were put into our different units, what we were going to do.
Did you get any, receive any passes or leaves while you were in your training?
Oh, maybe 6-hour passes to go to the south end of Miami Beach, and that's as far as we went. We never went any place. All we did, every place we went, we walked. We didn't have, just a few blocks. We didn't really go very far because we really didn't have, no, I don't think we had passes at that time.
Is that right?
No.
Do you remember about how much you made at that time, what the Army pay was?
Well, I think mine was $30 a month with a bond taken out and insurance, and which left us with nothing.
Nothing to have fun on then?
No, well, there wasn't anything to have fun on there anyway because we didn't do anything.
Do you remember, Ann, how much you
Well,
made?
yes. I thought I got $17.50, but I think maybe that was twice a month. So it was around $36 that I think I made.
Yeah, I think, let's see.
How did that compare to civilian wage at that time?
Oh, well, when I wasn't supposed to tell anybody then. When I started working for the Ohio Oil Company in 1938, I made $50 a month. But I could buy a good dress for $5.95. So if I made $35 or $36 a month, it was all clear. Food, clothing. Now, I think we did have to buy toothpaste, things like that. Although my folks sent me a bunch of stuff. But we had nothing.
Well, you went to the PX or
Yes.
something like that, and stuff was,
Very cheap.
Very cheap.
And now, Max, after you're involved in your basic training down in Miami Beach, what was your military unit? Did you were just in the United States Army at this time, Army Air Corps?
No, it was the Air Corps.
It was
I
the Air
enlisted in the Air Corps.
You enlisted specifically?
But it
Okay.
was the Army Air Corps. It wasn't the United States Air Force by itself. It was the Army Air Corps.
Okay. And after you were had completed your basic training, what did you do, and where did you go after that?
I was sent to St. Augustine, Florida, and we lived in a real old hotel for the first part of my stay down there. It was on the bay, and we marched to the Coast Guard base, which was at the Ponce de Leon Hotel, and that's where we worked. I did nothing but type and take shorthand, which I had done before, and it was very easy, and I enjoyed it. There was one great big room. It had beautiful ceilings and probably 18 to 20 desks in there. And I don't know what I typed and what I did, but it was not hard.
Did you work specifically for an officer of the Navy, or was it just general clerical responsibility?
It was general clerical.
Um,
However, this was interesting. I did drive the commander of the base into Jacksonville near Christmas time so he could do some Christmas shopping, which I thought I was pretty special.
to do that. Now, Max, I guess the questions leave from
I
there.
wanted to back up there just a little bit.
Sure.
But we stayed in hotels at Miami Beach. It was Brasnell Apartments, I can
Was it
remember.
nice?
Oh, no. The Cadillac Hotel was across the street, down the street, and that's where the officers were training down there. So, but it wasn't bad. I mean, we didn't have that good of food, but
adequate.
Well, that's that. I wanted to say that we stayed in hotels or apartments.
Well, where did you go, Max, after you completed your
Well,
basic
we
military training?
went to Denver, Colorado, to Lowry Air Force Base, where I took armament training, Air Force Armament, which was 50 caliber machine guns, all turning them down and everything like that. It was just the basic armament school. You just went to school and learned everything about armament, about airplanes, where they were and what you did. We didn't know where we were going to be. It was just basic aircraft armament.
Now, did you leave the United States at any time?
No.
No. You were
No.
stationed completely during the war
But-
in the States.
Do you want me to tell you after the armament school? or-
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Please elaborate on any.
Well,
of this.
after we finished school, we went to Salt Lake City. And that was a dispersal base and we were put in the training command. In other words, I went from there to Moses Lake, Washington. Everything was heavy bombardment. I think it was the 3rd Air Force, which was the training command. And we trained B-17 crews. And I was in the armament department, cleaning guns, installing them for gunnery practice and all this stuff.
Tell me about the B-17 crews you trained. Were these trained for European theater or for
The
Pacific?
B-17 was mostly in the European theater. The B-24s and stuff were in 25s were in the Pacific mostly. And later the B-29.
Did you get to meet and have some social time with any of these pilots or these crew members of the B-17?
Not at that time. No. We just, see, most of our work was done at night in preparation for the next day when they would go out and to gunnery practice, navigation, you name it. I mean, but we kept all of the aircraft armament in working order for their gunnery training, is all I know. And
well, do you have any thoughts about the planes you were associated with? The B-17 is a pretty famous plane. You know, it's
the
a
B-17 was the finest. It was the finest it was very airworthy. I mean, it was a good plane. The engines were very good. The right engine was real good. And you want me to go on from there?
Sure.
Okay. From there, when we couldn't fly anymore in the state of Washington, Moses Lake, which was out in the desert. I didn't know there was a desert in Washington, but there is. And there were several air bases out there where they trained combat crews at that time. Well, we closed up shop there and moved to Tampa, Florida, to Drew Field. The
And
whole
what year was
training.
this? What year was this?
Well, let's see. That would have been, we went in 42. That would have been 43. The fall or the winter, November of 43, and we moved everybody in our wing, training wing, to Drew Field, Florida, and that's what we did down there. We trained the B-17 crews, and then they took so many out of there to start a new base up at Gulfport, Mississippi. And that following spring, I went up to Gulfport. And I didn't, I want to back up a minute. When we came from, I'd never seen anybody from home or nothing. When we came from Washington State, we were 6 days and 7 nights in a chair car, all the way from Washington to Florida. And we came right through Robeson down here. Which is, and I'd never been home, see, since for a year.
Home, but so
well, when I got to Florida, I finally got my first leave, and I was home for Christmas the following year. I was gone the first Christmas, but I was home the following Christmas. And when I was in Gulfport, they took all the able-bodied guys that could fly, and not everybody could fly. I didn't want to, but I did. And they put them in B-29 school. and I was a gunner, and I went to training in Las Vegas Army Air Base in Las Vegas, Nevada. And from there, I went to Alamogordo, New Mexico, which was, there's a little thing I want to tell you. I took my B-29 training, navigation training, and aircraft armor, gunnery training, and all this different kind of stuff. But I was out on the flight line getting our plane, checking our plane over at 5 o'clock one morning when the first atomic bomb was set off at White Sands Proving Ground, which was right out in the desert right above us, just not too many miles out in the desert. And I can remember that it was just like the sun coming up, only it was pink, and it went over like this and went back down like that. It's just a big glow in the sky.
What'd you think?
I didn't know. They said an Army dump blew up. But it was like the sun coming up, but it was in the wrong direction. It was in the northwest. See, so, but I was on the flight line that morning. They canceled all flights that day.
Do you remember the approximate date or the
Well,
when that would have been?
It's history.
I know, but
Would that have been 19? Would it 45 or would it be late 44?
No, it was 45. Yes, because it was early 45, but fairly cool, if I remember right, when that happened, because they dropped one in Japan in July.
August, I believe.
July or August. One was July and one was August.
the E-Day is June, isn't it? European.
Well,
because
that
Hitler
was
committed
the next
suicide
one.
and
That was the
suicide
next
end of
one.
April.
But they, I'm pretty sure, because, well, anyway, to go on, I finished my training at Alamogordo and was they shipped us to Clovis. That was we were to take our cruise from there and go to Seattle to pick up our B-29 and then fly to Guam or Honolulu, Guam, and out to Okinawa, I reckon. My brother, who was in the Marine Corps, was at Guam. And I wrote him a letter and I said, I'll be seeing you. And while at Clovis, our names were on the bulletin board to be shipped to Seattle, and they dropped the atomic bomb and they canceled all shipping orders. That's how close I came to going overseas.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You know, you came very, very close to combat. You
Yeah.
know, and it had to be feelings of apprehension and a little bit of fear
yes.
and all that, because you know you had spent the majority of the war in the training situation, and now it was, you know, you were going that way. But let's just change a little bit and talk about a bit news from home. And did your mental attitude change during the war at all, or while the war progressed? Do you remember at all if maybe your thoughts changed or anything like that?
No, we lived in a world all our own. We were just involved in our little base.
Yeah.
There was a newspaper. There were Friday night, as I say, amateur things. There was boxing. We hardly knew there was an outside world. Now we did, but it didn't involve us.
Well, what did you think of the war so far? What did you know? Did you feel like you're living today in the 1990s? You know, we have television and radio, and we feel like everything is instantaneous, and we know what's happening. You know, half a world away within 5 or 10 minutes after an event.
I don't think anybody even had a radio. Did we?
Oh yeah. You had
In our hotel rooms?
no. The only We went to movies on the base.
Right.
And we had little passes every once in a while, but we had to be back, all the time. It's just...
Well, what do you, by the time that, let's say before you, the bomb was dropped, and how did you think the war was going, or what did you think of the war at that time?
Well, we could listen to the radios. I remember listening to the radio at, not the PX, but the, where we went to write letters home,
Non-commissioned officers club. What do you
Yeah,
call that?
well, it's, but anyway, I remember listening to the radio, and a guy was coming over there, and they called him Barracks Bag Heater, because the war was going to be over tomorrow. He was very optimistic, because everything was going right, and it wasn't always going right, like in the South Pacific and stuff like that. It was, and then there was Drew Pearson, and different. That's the only way that we kept track of things. I know when I was in, but to tell you how just on a base we were, because we were out in the desert all the time practically. I was in, we'd go over to, when we was in Las Vegas, we'd go over to Lake Mead, over to that town over there, just to lay on the grass and see the trees. I remember calling home, what's the trees look like, Mom, or, and things like that, because we never, all we seen was sagebrush and sand.
Well, you mentioned home, and that's where my next series of questions come from. Did you write many letters home, Ann?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. But I wanted them to write to me, too.
Well, did you receive many letters or packages, and if so, how often, and what types of things did you get in those packages?
Well, I got a lot of mail. But truly, now, you see, our wants were so limited. I asked for quarters and nickels for the Coke machines, and right now I can't remember. Food. Our food was not the best. We all agreed the chicken was Pelican, and I'm sure it wasn't, but it was adequate. And
it wasn't horse meat.
No, I didn't have horse meat.
Did you have horse meat?
Do you think you did?
I think we had horse ribs at basic training one time, because the meat was red as that pencil.
Is that right?
And can you tell me that any meat that's cooked that's red?
Well, is horse meat red?
I think it is.
I'll never know.
I'll never know, but then we ate it. That's all I know.
Well, did you receive many letters from your family back home?
Oh, yes. My mother couldn't write very well, but yeah, we really...
He had a girlfriend.
Yeah, and... I remember always getting cards and stuff from Aunt Fairy Imel.
Yeah.
She was our pride and joy, because she wrote to everybody. And I got letters from her ever so often. I always enjoyed them, because she'd tell me what was going on at home.
Well, did you forge close bonds of friendship with many or some of the people that you were in the service with?
Mm-hmm. I still keep in touch with 3. I was bridesmaid for Brenda, who lived in Massachusetts. You've been to Estelle's, haven't you, in Washington? Oh, that was...
Yeah, we
yes,
might have
okay.
been, but...
I keep in touch with Estelle, who lives in Washington, and with Polly Anderson in Boise, Idaho.
What about you, Max?
I have only one fella that I keep in touch with, and he was my tail gunner. I was the right gunner, the right scanner, and...
But for years, Max, you got Christmas cards from
Oh.
your see, now...
No, not much from Nubling. I got them from Harrisman in Idaho, and a couple of them Arnold Frank and New York, and but the one I hear from today every Christmas or every which is Schultz, and he is originally from Peoria, but he was my tail gunner, our tail gunner. We were all in a crew, and every time we went any place, we always went together, the officers and the enlisted men. There wasn't anything,
It was like a family.
we were like a family, and our officer says, you don't need to worry about rank or anything except when we're in the
When it's
presence
required.
of a higher official. But
Have you happened to see any of these people since the war? No?
but as I say, the Schultz, he worked for the water department in Los Angeles, and we keep in touch every year.
What would you say, Ann, would be the highlight occurrence of your military experience?
Oh, we marched in several real big parades.
Oh, tell me what.
One in New York City. Well, New York City. We were chosen to go to Fort Schuyler. That's the Merchant Marine Academy. And we marched there, rode on a, I don't know what kind of a boat, I should know, but it wasn't that important. And we sailed by the Statue of Liberty, marched up Wall Street, and I don't know the name of the building anymore, but we were there for the festivities. That was something very,
What was the celebration for?
I don't know. I wish you wouldn't ask me. I think it
Probably a bond drive or something.
well,
like
I
that.
just thought it was a graduation of one of the classes from Fort Schuyler. Are you getting close to the end?
We're getting close, and I think I'm going to fast forward at this point so we'll not be interrupted. Max, let me ask you the same question. What do you think was the highlight of your military experience?
The things that I remember, I was we were flying over Denver, Colorado one time, and we was flying between big fluffy clouds, and we ran into a thunderhead. And we dropped 1,000 feet and back up 1,000 feet in the snap of a finger. And it wrinkled all the fuselage. We were lucky to be alive. I mean, we were lucky to come out. He banked it over and come out of that thing. And when we landed, all the rivets next to the fuselage on the wings that were crinkled, the skin was, and rivets popped out and everything. And then at that same place, one time we were practicing touch and go landings, and our co-pilot was flying pilot and an instructor pilot was flying co-pilot, and you'd come in and land, and then you'd coast down the runway, and then you'd goose the engines and take off again. Well, the B-29 took off with quite a degree flap, and then as you took off and gained airspeed, well, you'd milk up the flaps, and then you'd rise again. But anyway, instead of ordinarily when you've got so much weight on the landing gears, you press the flap switch, and you're going. But he hit the landing gear switch, and there wasn't enough weight on the landing gear, and we crash landed, right belly landed, and skidded down the runway. And by the time the aircraft stopped, it was 10 seconds. 11 men were out of that aircraft, and it caught on fire. We were running out across the desert.
I remember that story.
Oh,
Yeah.
my. Well, tell me, what did you and the other people that you were in service with, what did you guys do to celebrate America's traditional holidays such as Thanksgiving and Christmas? Were you back home at that time?
No,
Or?
we had Thanksgiving at St. Augustine. I was homesick, and I really wasn't homesick.
We really didn't know what homesick
No.
was. See, I'd never been past St. Louis, I don't think. as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, Dad took us on a trip once in a while, but to our relatives in Dwight, Illinois, or up in Chicago or something. But actually, we didn't go away. We were just home people, and didn't know what it was to be homesick. I don't think this was something new to us.
Well, tell me this, Max. How did your crew that you were with? How did you guys celebrate traditional holidays and like Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Well, the first Christmas, it was just nobody. We knew nobody. I mean, it was just Christmas dinner. You know, I think we had several meats, and it was special, turkey or something, cranberries, and
No
they knew.
presents?
No presents except what we got from home, stuff that, you know, just little things. It wasn't much because actually our folks didn't have a lot of money. Nobody had a lot of money.
Well, can you tell me maybe, Ann, about your military rank, and did you happen to receive any decorations or anything like that while you were in the service?
Won't take long to tell you that. I was a yeoman 3rd class. And that meant that I could type and take shorthand and answer the telephone, and that was about it.
Did you ever receive any special commendations or awards or anything like that?
No.
What about you, Max?
No, I made sergeant and would have made staff sergeant. That would have been, at that time, after we got our plane, why I would have made staff sergeant. But I was a buck sergeant at that time when I come out, and
Just ordinary people, weren't we?
yeah, we just, I never will forget, we went to, every place we went, we hitchhiked because we didn't have cars or nothing. And people would pick you up. Today, you wouldn't nearly get a ride for nothing. But today, those days, you could anybody pick you up. And went to a bullfight in Juarez, Mexico, and rooted for the bull and stuff like that. We thought that was terrible. But
Well, how did you get along with the men with whom you had the greatest contact?
great. Everybody, Jewish fellas, greatest fellas you ever met. They were all great.
And
I never had any. There was a few in when we were in the training command, but our crew, aircraft crews, they were all great people.
And how about the women you served with?
I thought the women were wonderful. Now, there were men in that office, and actually, I think that was the first time I ever knew that there were gay people. There were 2 guys who worked in our office, and I liked them both. They were so nice, and one day they didn't show up for work. So I didn't know it then, but I know now that they were gay.
Why did they not show up for work?
Well,
I
think they were discharged.
Was that right?
Uh-huh.
At that time?
Because they didn't come back. So I assume that.
Are there any things you would do differently if you could do them once again with your military experience?
Yeah. I'd try harder. I'd try to advance myself with a big an advance in rank. For instance, I was a country girl, and I wanted to volunteer to be a platoon leader. Well, there were others around me who looked smarter and sharper and brighter, so I just marched in the platoon. But see, those are things that hindsight is always better. Yes, I think I could have done better than I did. And I think I would have gone to school to enhance the ability that I had, but it was just enough to get me by, and that's what I did.
What about you, Max?
Well, I think that I would have, if I knew this is all hindsight,
Sure.
I think I would have stayed in the service because I had 4 or 5 years, so another 15, why, I could have and been a young man.
Retired,
Retired and
go back and work.
yeah. And then I could, well, I never did take advantage of the
GI Bill.
GI Bill,
I didn't either.
which I think I
don't think we were encouraged to.
no,
See, we weren't too smart.
we were just sort of picks from the sticks, I guess you might say. But I think, even today, that we were very patriotic, more so than a lot of people, because we go to all the. I think it's a crime the way they treat the flag today.
Well, what was the most difficult thing you had to do during your period of military service? I know it sounds like you had some close calls here, you know, with the planes, but were there any difficult things that stand out in your mind?
No. No, those were the.
You had some terrible dysentery, didn't you?
Well, I had. We were playing ball in Denver, Colorado one time, and I fell down and skinned my hand, and that was in the afternoon. By midnight that night, I was in the hospital with a real high temperature and everything, and my arm was all red. It had become, I think it was the alkali soil there that infected everything. But once I got to the hospital, and I had dysentery down at Gulfport. That's what they call the GIs, you know, from a dirty mess kit.
Sure.
See, but outside of that, no, there's nothing.
And same question, was there what was the most difficult thing you had to do during your period of military service?
I don't think there was any.
The most difficult for me was to see those ships.
That
I
had
mean,
been
it
bombed.
might have woke me up more than anything to realize. Here we didn't realize what was going on. But that woke me up to say that we were at war and what they were doing to us, and which made us very much more loyal and patriotic, I think. Those ships sinking out there that morning.
Well, I'm going to ask two questions, and they're both the same, except that we're going to change the day.
Mm-hmm.
How did you learn about VE Day, and what was your reaction to it?
I'm thinking.
So that would have been April of 1945.
Yeah, no, I was home by then.
Okay.
The only thing I remember about VE Day is that we celebrated at First Church. And I spoke. I remember Walter Volkers. But that's all.
I don't remember.
No.
What about VJ Day?
Well, I had mixed feelings about that because that was brought about through the bombing.
And we're going to get to that question
Oh,
here.
all right.
So maybe we'll
Okay.
hold up just
All
a
right.
second. What about you, Max? What about VJ Day?
Well, all I know that I was ready to ship out when they canceled.
Great day for you.
Yes, because let's see. I know that the war was over. They dropped the bomb and they canceled all the shipments. But that I remember. The only thing that I remember was that they signed the thing in Tokyo Harbor on the Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I remember about it.
You don't remember the bombing?
Well, I remember the bombing, yes, that when they dropped it, the Enola Gay
Yeah.
dropped the first bomb.
Right.
I don't know who dropped the second one, but I know the Enola Gay dropped the first one.
Well, what was your opinion of the use of the atomic bomb when it was used against Japan in August of 1945?
I think at the time I was happy. I'm not so sure that I am now. But the war ceased, and that's why we were doing what we did, so that there might be peace.
Max?
I think it was great. A lot of people think that today think that the Japanese have been mistreated and everything because we dropped the bomb, but look at all the islands and everything that where our boys were mistreated and the death march and all that stuff. And I didn't feel bad about it at all.
Has that opinion changed over the last 50
No,
years?
it has not.
No.
Mine kind of has. I don't know if there would have been a more peaceable solution, but I think for the time that had to be done.
And when and where were you officially discharged from the service?
You may want to turn that off because I don't know. I received a medical discharge.
Did you?
I don't know when it was.
Max?
Well, I was discharged in up here at Champaign or Rantoul.
Okay.
Do you know when?
Do you know when that was?
Yeah, it was in February of '46.
February 46.
Because I was home on leave. It might have been January. No, I think I had a 30-day furlough from Lincoln, Nebraska. And I was home over Christmas. And then I went up there for my discharge in February, I think it was.
Well, with your medical discharge, were you, did you visit any Veterans Administration hospitals or anything like that? Or?
No. I started out with a severe ear infection, and you got those for swimming in the ocean, I think. Then my ankles and feet swelled terribly. And I told Max by the time I got home on the train from Florida, you couldn't see my feet for my ankles. And I still have problems with that, and Max kind of chides me about that. But,
What do you mean I chide you about it?
well...
I worry about it when she's on her feet so much.
Well, okay.
Well, tell me this, Ann. How did your experiences during World War II affect your life since that time?
I can't think that it affected my life at all. I made some lovely friends. Yes, I take that back. Max and I are both taking advantage of Veterans Administration medication. And I'm really grateful for that. We go to Danville.
Danville.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Max, how did your experiences during World War II affect your life since that time?
Well, I realize that it's made me come to realize that how great our country is and how lucky we are. And I think the people don't realize anymore how great a country we have and want to keep it that way. And I think I'm just more patriotic than I've ever been in my life.
But Max and I both came back home to jobs and took up where we left off.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
I think our health has been good.
I've got problems, and so has Ann, but
at our age, who
But
doesn't?
our age, who doesn't? I mean, thank God for the VA hospital.
Right. Well, I will ask this final question to both of you. Do you feel your wartime contribution to the nation has been appreciated?
Well, I'm sure it has. The war would have been won without us. But it gave us a sense of what? A sense of doing something. And as Max said, he might have been drafted, but I wanted to do something in a small way.
Max?
Well, I think that's true. What really brings it home to you that the ones that didn't come back, I just feel so bad that those people. I had a good friend that died in the Battle of the Bulge in the paratroopers, and He was one of my best friends, and we ran around together all the time, and I still shed a tear for him. For a lot of people, but I just I think it's a shame that our young people don't realize what our veterans did for them.
But may I interject this?
It's-
I don't think I appreciated the people who fought in the First World War.
But you knew about them. I don't think it's taught today.
Oh, yeah, it is. I don't know.
Well, just think about the poor guys in Vietnam. They went, they didn't ask any questions, but they were run down when they come back. And it wasn't their fault at all. They just were doing their duty. This wall out here was the greatest thing that ever was.
Oh, Max and I just thought it was wonderful.
Oh, it was wonderful.
It was an honor to be associated with that whole project. Well, Ann and Max, I want to thank you for your time and for cooperating with this project, and I sincerely appreciate the time you shared with me.
It's been our pleasure.
It's been our pleasure. I hope that we've been giving you a little bit of insight. I'm not a very good speaker, but
I'm sorry, I just can't remember.
yeah, there's a lot of things that we can't remember, and but
I think you did just fine.
Good.
well, thanks a lot.
Good.